Imagine this. A family, just like any other, is about to embark on a long-awaited vacation. They're standing at the gate, excitement buzzing in the air, when something unexpected happens, something that will change the course of their day in ways no one could have predicted. This isn't just another travel story, it's a moment that reveals how assumptions can unravel even the most ordinary situations. At Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, the scene is familiar. Announcements echo through the terminal, travelers hustle with carry-ons, and flight crews move with practiced precision. At Gate 12, Nathan and Simone Reynolds stand with their two kids, Jaden and AA, watching as passengers begin boarding. The family exudes calm. They've done this before. First-class boarding hasn't started yet, so there's no rush. Nathan scrolls through his phone while Simone adjusts AA's tiny backpack. At 7 years old, AA has an insatiable curiosity about airplanes, peppering her parents with questions every time they fly. Meanwhile, 9-year-old Jaden is glued to his Nintendo Switch, oblivious to the chaos around him. For the Reynolds family, this trip is more than just a getaway. It's a chance to disconnect from work emails and tech meetings and reconnect with each other on the serene Maui coast. As the pre-boarding process unfolds, a seasoned flight attendant named Jessica Barnes approaches the counter. With nearly a decade of experience under her belt, she carries herself with quiet confidence. Adjusting her blazer, she glances toward the growing line for first-class boarding, and then her gaze lands on the Reynolds family. Her expression doesn't shift dramatically, but there's a flicker of something unreadable. Is it skepticism? Surprise? Nathan catches her staring just as he looks up from his phone. It's not overtly hostile, but it feels off. He exchanges a glance with Simone, who notices it too, though neither says anything. When the gate agent announces priority boarding, Nathan pulls out their tickets and leads the way, gripping AA's hand tightly. Jessica steps forward as they approach the jet bridge. "Excuse me, sir," she says firmly, positioning herself between them and the entrance. "This is for first-class boarding only." Nathan blinks, momentarily caught off guard. Then, without missing a beat, he holds up their tickets. "I know," he replies evenly. "We're in 2A and 2B. There's a pause, a fraction of a second where Jessica seems to hesitate. Her professional smile returns quickly, but her tone betrays a subtle tension. "Oh, of course," she says, stepping aside. Yet, something lingers in her voice, a hint of doubt that doesn't escape Simone's notice. Still, the couple brushes it off. They're eager to settle into their seats and leave the minor exchange behind. The first-class cabin aboard American Horizon Flight 227 is everything you'd expect. Sleek, luxurious, and designed to make even the longest flights bearable. As the family takes their seats, awe immediately begins exploring the features of her chair, marveling at how it moves with the touch of a button. "Mommy, look, my chair moves," she exclaims, her excitement infectious. Jaden, still engrossed in his game, mutters a distracted, "Cool," earning a chuckle from Simone. She loves these moments, the way her children find joy in the simplest things. Nathan, meanwhile, remains unfazed by the earlier interaction. He's used to people making assumptions, questioning whether he belongs in spaces like this. But today, he refuses to let it dampen their spirits. Back in the aisle, Jessica watches the family intently. While assisting other passengers, her eyes keep drifting back to 2A and 2B. Something about them gnaws at her. They don't fit the mold of typical first-class travelers, at least not the ones she's accustomed to serving. No designer luggage, no tailored suits, no air of effortless entitlement. Instead, Nathan wears a hoodie, and Simone opts for a simple yet elegant dress. Their kids are lively and curious, traits often absent in the quieter, more reserved atmosphere of first class. And then there's the way they carry themselves, not arrogant, but comfortable, as if they truly believe they belong here. Jessica presses her lips together, her instincts telling her something isn't right. She walks over to Megan, another flight attendant setting up the drink cart. Lowering her voice, she asks, "Hey, did you check that family's boarding passes when they got on?" Megan looks up, puzzled. "You mean the ones in 2A and 2B? Yeah, they're fine." "Why?" Jessica hesitates, aware of how her question might sound. But her gut won't let it go. "No reason," she says, forcing a smile. "Just checking." But Jessica isn't done checking. A few minutes later, after the last passengers have settled in, she makes her way back to 2A and 2B. This time, her demeanor is different, more authoritative. Stopping beside Nathan and Simone, she flashes another polite but strained smile. "Sir, ma'am," she begins, her voice measured, "I'm going to need to see your tickets again." Nathan looks up slowly, his expression unreadable. "Why?" he asks calmly. Jessica doesn't flinch. "It's just routine," she explains, though her tone suggests otherwise. Imagine this. A seemingly ordinary flight turns into an extraordinary showdown, one that will leave you questioning everything about assumptions, privilege, and power dynamics. It all starts with a simple request. A flight attendant asks to see boarding passes again, but what unfolds next is anything but routine. At 6 o'clock, the tension begins to simmer. Jessica approaches Nathan and Simone once more, her demeanor polished yet unyielding. "Verification," she says curtly. Simone frowns, clearly puzzled. "But we already scanned our passes at the gate." Her tone isn't confrontational, just confused. Jessica's smile remains intact, practiced and impenetrable. "I understand, ma'am, but sometimes mistakes happen." The words hang in the air like a challenge. Nathan exhales audibly through his nose, reaches into his pocket, and pulls out his phone. A few taps later, their digital boarding passes are displayed on the screen. He turns the device toward Jessica without hesitation. 2A and 2B, he says, his voice calm but firm, daring her to find fault. Jessica barely glances at the screen before stepping back. "Thank you," she replies, her clipped tone betraying her dissatisfaction. She walks away, but something still gnaws at her, an itch she can't scratch, a suspicion she can't shake. And then, as if fate itself conspired against the Reynolds family, Little Ah unwittingly provides Jessica with the ammunition she's been waiting for. Still mesmerized by the wonders of the reclining seat, Ah presses one of the buttons too enthusiastically. The tray table springs out with a loud clunk, startling the older gentleman seated across the aisle. He glances over briefly, mildly annoyed, before returning to his newspaper. "But Jessica, oh," Jessica zeroes in on the sound like a hawk spotting its prey. This is it, the disruption she needed to justify her growing unease. She squares her shoulders, takes a deep breath, and marches back over, ready to make a decision that will alter the course of the flight, and perhaps her career. Stopping beside 2A and 2B, Jessica clasps her hands in front of her, adopting the posture of someone who means business. Her gaze lands on AA, who is now fascinated by the tray table mechanism. "I'm sorry," Jessica says, her voice smooth but laced with authority, "but I'm going to have to ask you to keep your children under control. This is a first-class cabin, and we expect a certain level of decorum." Nathan looks up from his phone, eyebrows slightly raised. "Excuse me?" he asks, incredulous. Jessica's smile stays plastered on her face, but there's a noticeable edge to her tone now. "It's a safety issue. If your daughter keeps playing with the seat functions, she could cause damage to the aircraft." Simone, caught between confusion and irritation, steps in. She's just excited. She's not hurting anyone. But Jessica isn't swayed. Folding her arms across her chest, she delivers her line with practiced precision. "Regardless, we have to ensure a comfortable environment for all passengers." She glances around the cabin as if expecting others to rally behind her, but no one seems particularly disturbed. In fact, most passengers appear indifferent, absorbed in their own worlds. Ah, sensing the tension, shrinks back into her seat, clutching her stuffed bunny tightly. The once vibrant energy in the cabin dims noticeably. Nathan exhales slowly, maintaining his composure despite the rising frustration. "Look," he begins, his voice measured, "we're just sitting here, following the same rules as everyone else. So what exactly is the problem?" Jessica's jaw tightens. She isn't used to being questioned like this, especially not in her domain. "I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voices," she says, even though neither Nathan nor Simone had raised theirs. "You're being disruptive." At this, Simone scoffs, crossing her arms defiantly. "We're being disruptive." Nathan rubs his temple, trying to keep his cool. "Okay, let's get something straight. We paid for these seats. We're sitting here quietly. My daughter is 7 years old, and now all of a sudden, we're a problem." Jessica straightens, her expression hardening. This is the pushback she'd anticipated, the entitled argumentative type unwilling to follow simple rules. Or so she thinks. "I'm sorry, sir," she says, her voice cooling further, almost robotic, "but I'm going to have to ask you to return to your assigned seats in economy." Silence blankets the cabin. For a moment, it feels as though the air has been sucked out of the room. Even Jaden, who had been engrossed in his Nintendo Switch, looks up, sensing the gravity of the situation. Simone's lips part, but no words come out. Finally, she manages to speak, her voice barely above a whisper. "What?" Jessica doesn't flinch. "This section is reserved for first-class passengers. If you're confused about your seating, I'd be happy to assist." Before she can continue, Nathan cuts her off. His voice is still calm, but there's an unmistakable sharpness to it now. "We are first-class passengers." Without waiting for a response, he pulls out his phone again, flashing the same digital boarding passes Jessica had already seen. 2A and 2B, he repeats, his tone clipped. "So if there's some issue, you might want to check your system instead of assuming we don't belong here." For the briefest of moments, Jessica's smile flickers, just a fraction of a second, but it's enough to reveal the crack in her armor. Instead of backing down, however, she doubles down. "I'm going to need you to step off the aircraft," she declares, her voice steady but tinged with desperation. The standoff escalates, drawing curious glances from nearby passengers. What started as a minor inconvenience has spiraled into something far bigger, exposing layers of bias, privilege, and systemic assumptions that neither side saw coming. Picture this. A family, moments away from embarking on their dream vacation, is suddenly thrust into an escalating confrontation that feels like it's ripped straight out of a movie. The tension builds as the situation spirals out of control, leaving everyone watching to wonder, what happens next? At 11 o'clock, the standoff reaches its boiling point. Jessica's voice cuts through the cabin with icy precision. "So we can clear up this misunderstanding," she says, gesturing toward the aisle. Simone lets out a hollow laugh, shaking her head in disbelief. "You have got to be kidding me." Jessica doesn't respond directly. Instead, she turns to another flight attendant stationed near the cockpit. "Can we get security to the cabin, please?" The request sends ripples through the first-class section. Nearby passengers stiffen, some exchanging uneasy glances while others pointedly look away, pretending not to notice the drama unfolding around them. Nathan leans back in his seat, jaw clenched so tightly it feels like it might crack. His pulse pounds in his ears, drowning out the hum of the aircraft engines. He's been here before, not exactly in this scenario, but in moments where assumptions about him overshadow reality. No matter how much money he has, no matter how many years he spent building his company from scratch, there are still people who see only what's on the surface. A man in a hoodie, someone who couldn't possibly belong in a space like this. And now, because of one person's bias, his entire family is being humiliated in front of dozens of strangers. 2 uniformed airport security officers board the plane moments later. One is tall and broad-shouldered, exuding authority with his stiff posture. The other seems younger, almost hesitant, as if he's questioning whether this is really necessary. Jessica steps forward, arms folded across her chest, ready to deliver her version of events. "They're refusing to comply with instructions," she says smoothly, her tone dripping with practiced professionalism. "They're in the wrong seats and causing a disturbance." The younger officer glances at Nathan and Simone. To him, they don't look disruptive. If anything, they resemble every other first-class passenger, polished, composed, maybe even a little annoyed by the accusation. Nathan leans forward slightly, his voice steady but laced with incredulity. "Let me get this straight. You're kicking us off this plane, in front of our kids, because, what? You think we don't belong here?" Jessica tilts her head slightly, maintaining her calm facade. "Sir, I need you to remain calm." Simone lets out a bitter laugh, cutting through the tension. "You want him to remain calm after you've been harassing us since we boarded?" Jessica sighs dramatically, turning back to the officers. "I tried to resolve this situation, but they're refusing to cooperate. I don't want to delay the flight for the other passengers." The taller officer, clearly eager to diffuse the growing tension, addresses Nathan directly. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to come with us." For a moment, the cabin holds its breath. Simone braces herself, half expecting Nathan to refuse, and honestly, she wouldn't blame him if he did. But instead, he slowly rises to his feet, his expression unreadable. Simone follows suit, shaking her head in disbelief. Jaden silently packs away his Nintendo Switch, his usual carefree demeanor replaced by quiet frustration. Tears welling up in her big brown eyes, clutches her stuffed bunny tighter, overwhelmed by the weight of the moment. Passengers watch in awkward silence as the Reynolds family gathers their belongings, walking down the aisle with their heads held high despite the palpable humiliation. As they pass Jessica, Nathan locks eyes with her one last time. She's already smirking, convinced she's won this battle. What she doesn't know, what she can't know, is that she's just made the biggest mistake of her career. Because the man she kicked off the plane didn't just buy first-class tickets. He owns the airline. The moment the family steps into the terminal, the air feels heavy, not from humidity, but from the sheer weight of what just happened. AA wipes at her eyes, confused and shaken. Jaden, usually unbothered by most things, stares at the floor, his jaw tight with suppressed anger. Simone is fuming, pacing back and forth as she tries to process everything. "I swear, Nathan," she says, her voice trembling with emotion, "if you don't say something." Nathan exhales sharply, pressing a hand to his forehead. He's not the type to make a scene, he never has been, but this is beyond anything he's willing to tolerate. Before he can respond, murmurs begin to ripple through the terminal. Gate agents whisper among themselves, casting sidelong glances at the family. Passengers who witnessed the incident hover nearby, some shaking their heads in disapproval, others pulling out their phones to document the aftermath. A middle-aged woman with a concerned expression approaches Simone cautiously. "I saw everything," she says, her voice soft but firm. Imagine this. A single moment of misjudgment spirals into a corporate nightmare, exposing the cracks in an industry built on appearances. What happens next isn't just about accountability, it's about power, perception, and the price of assumptions. At 15:03, the tension in the terminal is palpable. A middle-aged woman approaches Simone with genuine concern etched across her face. "That was wrong," she says softly, glancing toward the gate where the incident unfolded. "Do you want me to call someone? Record a statement?" Simone offers a tight smile, appreciating the sentiment but knowing deep down that this situation won't be resolved by airport security or viral outrage. No, this goes far beyond that. It's bigger than one flight attendant's actions. It's about the reputation of an entire airline. A few feet away, a young man in a navy blue suit power walks toward them, his face pale and beads of sweat forming along his hairline. His airport badge flashes as he adjusts his tie nervously, eyes darting between Nathan and the remnants of the flight crew still lingering near the aircraft. "Mr. Reynolds?" he asks cautiously, his voice tinged with panic. Nathan turns slowly, his expression unreadable. The man takes a step closer, extending his hand. "I'm Daniel Ross, Director of Customer Relations." He swallows hard before continuing, his words rushed and strained. I just got word of what happened. Could we step over here for a moment?" Before Nathan can respond, Simone steps forward, arms crossed. Her tone is sharp, cutting through the air like glass. "Before we do that, do you even know who my husband is?" Daniel swallows again, visibly sweating now. He absolutely does. That's why he's here, why he's trembling. Nathan isn't just any first-class passenger, he's one of the largest investors in American Horizon Airlines. Just months earlier, the airline had publicly announced a groundbreaking partnership with Reynolds Innovations, Nathan's billion-dollar tech company. The collaboration was hailed as a progressive step toward increasing diversity in corporate leadership. There were interviews, press releases, photos of the CEO shaking Nathan's hand, a symbol of unity and progress. And now one of their own flight attendants had forcibly removed him from a plane. Jessica Barnes had no idea. She couldn't have known that her actions weren't just embarrassing a family, they were humiliating the company at its highest level. Judging by the frantic movement near the gate, it seemed the higher-ups were only beginning to realize the magnitude of the mess they were in. Daniel clears his throat, attempting to regain composure. "Mr. Reynolds, I sincerely apologize for what just happened. I assure you this is not a reflection of our airline's values." But Nathan holds up a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. His voice is calm but measured, each word deliberate. You said you got word of what happened, he says, fixing Daniel with an unyielding gaze. So what exactly did you hear? Daniel hesitates, caught off guard by the question. He hadn't expected this. I was informed that there was a misunderstanding regarding your seats and, he trails off as Simone scoffs loudly. A misunderstanding? Nathan shakes his head, lips pressed into a thin line. Let me make something very clear, he says, keeping his voice steady. I don't need a scripted corporate apology. I need accountability. Daniel's Adam's apple bobs as he nods vigorously. Of course, sir, absolutely. The flight attendant in question will, but Nathan cuts him off, his tone firm. Bring her here. Daniel blinks, startled. Sir, Nathan repeats, his voice unwavering. Bring her here. Daniel's hands twitch at his sides, hesitation written all over his face. But one look at Nathan tells him this isn't a request, it's a demand. Why yes, sir, he stammers before hurrying back toward the jet bridge. Simone exhales sharply, glancing at her husband. Are you sure about this? Nathan doesn't respond immediately. In his mind, though, he knows exactly how this is going to play out. Because Jessica Barnes is about to learn the hard way that actions have consequences. Meanwhile, inside the aircraft, Jessica stands near the front of the cabin, sipping from a small cup of water. She appears completely unbothered, convinced she did her job correctly. Passengers are supposed to follow the rules. If people aren't where they're meant to be, it's her responsibility to handle it. To her, the Reynolds family fit a familiar stereotype, pushing limits, acting like the rules didn't apply to them. It wasn't personal, or so she told herself. But when Daniel Ross approaches with a face 2 shades too pale, her stomach drops. What's going on? She asks, straightening her posture instinctively. Daniel doesn't answer. Instead, he jerks his head toward the exit, signaling for her to follow. Confusion flickers across Jessica's face, but she complies, smoothing down her blazer as she steps off the plane. And that's when she sees them, Nathan and Simone Reynolds, standing right there, waiting. Jessica's breath hitches. The kids are gone, likely taken to a quieter part of the terminal, but Nathan's presence looms large. His face is unreadable, while Simone stares straight through her, arms crossed defiantly. Something about their demeanor, the way Daniel hovers nearby like a man bracing for impact, sends a chill through Jessica's body. She knows instantly that something is very, very wrong. Jessica, Daniel begins, his voice tight, this is Mr. Nathan Reynolds. Jessica blinks, processing the name. Okay, she says uncertainly. Simone scoffs, shaking her head in disbelief. Daniel's fingers twitch as if resisting the urge to rub his temples. Nathan Reynolds, he clarifies, his tone heavy with implication, as in the man who owns a controlling stake in this airline. Jessica freezes, her breath hitching so sharply it almost hurts. The weight of the revelation crashes over her in waves. Nathan lets the silence stretch, giving her time to absorb the gravity of the situation. Finally, he speaks, his voice calm but commanding. I'm going to give you a chance to explain yourself. Jessica's pulse pounds in her ears as she stammers, I was just doing my job. There was confusion with the seating arrangements, and she trails off as Nathan tilts his head slightly, his expression unchanged. Imagine this. A single misjudgment on a routine flight spirals into a life-altering confrontation, exposing the raw truths about bias, privilege, and accountability. What happens next isn't just about one person's mistake, it's about the ripple effects of assumptions and the power to demand change. At 2100, the tension in the terminal reaches its peak. Jessica swallows hard, her voice trembling as she tries to defend herself. I thought they were in the wrong section. Simone narrows her eyes, incredulous. Even after we showed you our tickets. Jessica opens her mouth to respond but no words come out. The silence hangs heavy, broken only by Daniel exhaling sharply through his nose, already exhausted by the damage control this situation is going to require. Nathan takes a slow step closer, his presence commanding yet calm. Tell me something, Miss Barnes, he begins, his voice steady. What exactly about my family made you assume we didn't belong in first class? Jessica's throat tightens. It's the question she can't answer. not without revealing the uncomfortable truth. No matter how she tries to spin it, the reality sits like a stone in the pit of her stomach. Nathan lets the silence stretch, allowing her to sit with the weight of her actions. Finally, he continues, "You had multiple chances to fix your mistake. At the gate when you asked for our tickets the first time, when you called security, but instead, you doubled down. You embarrassed my wife. You humiliated my children. You turned an innocent moment into a public spectacle." Jessica's fingers curl into her palms, her face flushed with shame. Daniel steps in, clearing his throat nervously. "Mr. Reynolds, we will be handling disciplinary action," but Nathan raises a hand, cutting him off. "No need. I already know how this is going to end." Jessica's stomach flips as Nathan turns his gaze back to her, his expression unwavering. "As of this moment, you're fired." Jessica staggers, her voice barely above a whisper. "Wait. Your badge." She freezes, looking between Nathan and Daniel, expecting someone to intervene, to soften the blow. But Daniel doesn't flinch, he knows better. Jessica feels her face burn as she slowly reaches for her airline badge, unpinning it from her blazer with shaky fingers. She places it in Nathan's waiting palm. Just like that, it's over. She had kicked a billionaire off his own airline, and now she had to walk out of that airport jobless. Nathan turns to Daniel, his tone firm. "Make sure this never happens again." Daniel nods quickly. "Understood, sir." Jessica, now numb, takes a step back. Nathan looks at her one last time. "Next time you judge someone based on how they look, you might want to think twice." Jessica's throat is too tight to respond because, for the first time in her career, she isn't in control. Jessica Barnes walks out of Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, her hands trembling as she grips the strap of her purse. Just an hour ago, she had been a senior flight attendant on one of the country's leading airlines. Now, she was nobody. No severance, no graceful exit, just the harsh reality of knowing she had thrown away her career in a matter of minutes, all because she had made a terrible assumption. Meanwhile, back in the terminal, Nathan and Simone sit in a private lounge with their children, waiting for the airline CEO to call personally. Jaden is quiet, staring at his juice box, while Ah clings to her mother's side, still shaken. Nathan rubs his temples, reflecting on the years he spent building his legacy, working twice as hard, proving himself in rooms where people like him were never expected to be. And yet, one flight attendant had erased all of that in an instant because, in her mind, he couldn't possibly belong in first class. Simone sighs, watching him. "What are you thinking?" Nathan exhales slowly. "That no matter how much we achieve, no matter how much we succeed, we'll always run into people like her." Simone squeezes his hand. "Yeah, but this time, she didn't win." Nathan nods, glancing at his children. "No, she didn't." Moments later, Daniel Ross returns, looking deeply relieved that things hadn't escalated further. "Mr. Reynolds," he says carefully, "the CEO has personally instructed that you and your family be upgraded to our private jet service for your trip to Maui. At no cost, of course." Nathan studies him for a moment. "And what else?" Daniel swallows. "We'll be launching an internal review on all flight crew training procedures." "This won't happen again." Nathan leans back in his seat, letting the words settle. "Good. That's the real win. Not the free flight, not the perks. The change. Because for once, the right people are being held accountable, and people like Jessica Barnes are learning the hard way that their assumptions have consequences." Nathan looks at his children, the innocence in AA's eyes, the quiet anger in Jaden's, and then turns to Daniel. "You tell your CEO that this isn't about an apology," he says firmly. "This is about making sure that the next time a black family walks onto one of your planes, they're treated with the same respect as everyone else." Daniel nods quickly. "Understood, sir." Nathan exhales, then looks at Simone. "Let's go." As they stand, Ah slips her tiny hand into Nathan's. "Daddy," she whispers. "Yeah, baby, are we still going to Hawaii?" Nathan smiles down at her. "Yeah, baby girl, we are. Because no one, not even Jessica Barnes, is going to take that away from us." It's easy to judge people by how they look. It's easy to assume. But before you do, ask yourself, what if you're wrong? Because sometimes, the people you underestimate are the ones who can change your life forever. What would you have done in this situation? Have you ever experienced or witnessed something similar? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real-life stories that need to be heard.